All right. We are now live. We're recording for Talking About Survivor. I'm Christiana Ellis. And with me here is... Whoop.
Sorry, I was just checking my notes while you were introducing it.
Mike Meitin. And so today we're going to talk about the premiere episode of Survivor San Juan del Sur. No more snap judgments based on insufficient information here. The game is in play.
Yes. So now we'll just be making judgments based on 5 minutes of screen time per person.
Oh, it's better than, a 30-second video and some stock answers to interview questions. It is carefully curated footage is what it is now on the show, is because they shot hours and hours probably and then edited it down to 5 minutes. So it's the 5 minutes they've chosen to show us. Anyway, we can talk about the episode. I don't know about you, but I was actually very pleased with the episode. I thought they did a pretty good job of getting us emotionally invested in multiple players right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of made that joke, is that, even though we've only seen one episode, we actually do feel like we've gotten to know a little bit about these pairs and these people.
Mm-hmm.
And, like you said, there is a little bit of an emotional attachment. We can start to see how some people's gameplay is going to work. And, in particular, I think when we come down to the vote, there was some interesting strategy by the swing vote guy. I forget what his name.
It was Josh.
Yeah, is he the blonde guy of the
mm-hmm.
guy couple? Yeah, he he's playing an interesting strategy. And like you said, we can almost see how he's going to be playing the rest of the game just in a
mm-hmm.
short episode. So I liked it. I thought they put it together well. I thought they, not just put together the design, the challenges and the mechanics well, but they edited the footage and to give us enough that it was really good. So yeah, I was ultimately very pleased with the episode. Yep. For a first episode, because sometimes those are kind of like, because you get rid of somebody that you don't really know, and it's taking a while for everybody to get going. This one felt like it got going. So.
Yeah, I agree. There was some interesting implementation of the twists. What did you think about the one-on-one, Jeremy versus Val, and that being the determination of who goes to Exile Island and all that?
I liked that because that was probably the most interesting thing about Redemption Island. Wasn't necessarily that somebody got to come back, is that we got to watch duels every week. So they've recreated the duel mechanic without having to do the Redemption Island. So they're using the duel. I assume they're going to use the duel every week to send someone to the island. So I liked that.
Yeah, that's my guess too. Although it's interesting, just if they really want it to be always this sort of one loved one against another. Like, for example, now that Nadia has been voted out, Natalie can't do a duel against her loved one. So I wonder how they're going to always decide which one-on-one does the duel.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, obviously they can't always just be the loved ones dueling against each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I guess we'll see next time whether they stick with that, and maybe you're safe from Exile Island if you have lost your loved one.
That would be interesting.
That would be an interesting way they could do it. Or they'll have some other way, maybe this was a one-time thing of the loved ones dueling, but, and the duel will be more random or something like that in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But
yep. So
there's nothing surprise now that they know. So when it's like you have to choose somebody to duel, you automatically know they're going to be dueling against a loved one. So there's less surprise there, so they don't necessarily need to keep that. But it would be interesting if they did keep that, and the loved one, if you've lost your loved one, you're safe.
Mm-hmm.
Or if your loved one's already there, you can't compete as a duel either. Or I guess no, because they don't stay there, do they? They come back.
Well, yeah. So they come back for the immunity challenge, and then they're back after that.
Oh, they do return. So the guy, the farmer, or not the
Yeah.
farmer.
So remember, so Keith and Val are the two that went this first time.
Right.
Val was, the wife of Jeremy, so sent after the duel, and then Keith was the Southern firefighter with the mustache.
Right.
And so, but they came back after the immunity challenge, and it was just that they
So they
missed
returned
that
back.
first.
But did they return to exile?
I don't think so. I think they're back now, and it's just
that's
that. Next time, presumably after the reward challenge, we'll get another 2 people sent there, and then they just have to be there for the days between the challenges.
Right. So it's not that, there's not someone having to remain there like in Redemption. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. Temporary. Although theoretically, you could end up with the same person getting sent back multiple times, but even then, they would be going back and forth. But anyway, we'll see. They also might continue to mix it up as the season progresses. Who knows?
Because how did it used to be? It used to be you competed in the reward challenge, and the losing tribe had to send somebody. Is that correct?
Yeah, or I think, usually the winning tribe got to pick someone.
That's right. They got to pick somebody to send, so they could send a strong player to weaken them before the immunity challenge. Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
All right. So, as with the last Blood versus Water season, we had all the couples get to start together, each couple separate from the other couples. And they got a flint to practice starting a fire, which was, I think, a good idea just because it gave, first of all, the idea that they would be able to start a fire for their own first night, but also just gave them something to measure each couple by right off the bat. You know what I mean? It's like who was able to start fire, who wasn't.
Yep. So I like that. I also think, just from a contestant point of view, I think it's nice not only to be able to start fire for the first night, but it's something to do together. It's a thing that you get to work on together, because you're not going to be able to work, as opposed to just sitting around and being like, oh, I'm going to miss you, let's hang out. They get to perform a task and work as a team, which would be fun, part of the fun when you go out with your loved one. So.
Yep. So some of the couples that I guess we got a little bit from each couple for that first night, some more than others. We got a little bit from John M. as opposed to John Rocker. John Misch. John and Jacqueline were described as experienced winners because she won a pageant once and he played football, I guess. So I'm not disputing. Maybe he was on a winning team, but it seemed like a weird way to say it.
Well, he has won games.
I guess so, but that makes him an experienced winner, I guess. I'm not necessarily even disputing it. I just thought that was an odd way to say it.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it's just part of how they're trying to paint that couple. They're this, they're
the Ken and Barbie couple.
Smiley, and they win at everything, and they're awesome.
Yeah. Boy, John there was surprisingly intense. Just for right off the bat, I'm mostly thinking of the bit later when they actually go to their individual tribe camps, but he's going to we got our official survivor bags, rusty stuff so we can get tetanus. It's like Christmas morning. Yeah. He's kind of goofy. I think I like him.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So we got then John Rocker and Julia. They launched right into what was controversial about him, I guess, or at least acknowledging that there's controversy as opposed to digging into the details of it. It's always interesting, though, I think, he's saying there's no dodging his baggage, but calling him a bigot, them's fighting words right there. And whenever I hear stuff like that, it's kind of like, Well, you could acknowledge what the problem was that people had with what you said, as opposed to just being mad that someone's calling you a name. But I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
it was especially when you said a pretty decisively bigoted comment.
Yeah. See, I think the issue, of course, is just that there are many people who hold bigoted views who don't realize that that's what it is. And so if you call them a bigot, they're offended because they don't think of themselves that way. Because, I mean, but in reality, whoever thinks of themselves as a bigot? Nobody ever thinks of themselves. It's like someone thinking of themselves as a supervillain or something. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what's going to go on with him. He's definitely already out of the gates playing like a little bit of a wrecking ball. You know what I mean? It's like, well, okay, I take that back because, you know, there was a little bit of that setup, but then he didn't actually follow through on some of that early stuff. Well,
he seemed to, play just pretty normally, I thought.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know. Maybe this was my own expectation that's coloring this. We'll cover that a little bit more because we didn't really get any of that this early anyway. I did like. I keep wanting to say Julia, but I think it's Julie. Yes, Julie McGee is John Rocker's girlfriend, and finishing their little clip with, "Wait, snakes don't live in holes, do they?"
I mean, she's a kind of a trip because she talks a lot about how she, you know, her intro is like, you know, yeah, I'm the girlfriend of the professional athlete, but I can hold my own too. And then she proceeds to behave exactly like you would expect a girlfriend of a professional athlete stereotype. You know?
Well, yeah, so she's seeing all these little holes in the sand and thinking, it's like, oh, there's just probably crabs in all of those. And then, wait, snakes don't live in holes, do they? It's just a funny thing to say. So then we got Missy and Baylor. We got them gaping at the howler monkeys. I think that's what they are, right? I mean, the monkeys are making the loud noise, obviously. That's what I'm talking about. Are they howler monkeys? Do you know?
I believe they are.
Okay. I'm forgetting if there's actually some other name for them. But anyway, it's interesting that what Probst said about them in this intro clip was the idea of...
The howler monkeys?
Oh, no, I was saying Probst saying the Baylor taking on the mother role due to Missy's 3 divorces. Just because that was a tidbit that we didn't get from what we were reading in the bios and so on, the pre-show stuff. Then, of course, we have Drew and Alec using a bit of hair to start the fire. And
he cuts out. Yeah, he makes him cut out his hair.
Yeah, and I guess it worked because they got fire, but really? I don't know. That seems like it seems like
I
unnecessary.
don't feel like that was the reason why.
Well, right. Oh, yep. I think that's exactly what we had.
Yep.
So those of you doing just the audio, if you look up a picture of a howler monkey, you will see pretty much what we just looked at. So yeah, but using the hair just seemed unnecessary. It seemed like probably you could have spent a few more minutes doing something with the bamboo or whatever, and because you're not going to keep using the hair over and over, I would assume. But I don't know. Got the job done. You know, maybe we shouldn't overjudge results.
Yeah, and it was funny, which I think was part of what they were going for as well.
Yeah. And then we've got Dale and Dale and Kelly, I think. Kelly, I think, is Dale's daughter. Scrolling back and forth. Yes, so Dale and Kelly, and we hear about their up and down relationship, and that Dale's an experienced farmer, And then, of course, we get Reed and Josh, who certainly make an impression. They seem fun to watch on TV. They hunt a crab.
Yeah, that's the couple, right? Sorry.
Yeah, Josh and Reed is the gay couple. They are the gay couple, I guess? Yes. The gay couple is Josh and Reed. They start fire, they hunt a crab, and we learn that Reed gave Josh Flint for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, they're super fans.
Yep.
They're funny and they're fun together too. So.
Yes, so I'm fans of theirs so far. Then we got Jeremy and Val, and I like they've got kind of a fun, like, loving rivalry and competition thing going too between them. You know, just the trash talk is part of their relationship. It seems fun.
Yeah, I mean, they really own that one of them's a firefighter, one of them's a cop, and
yeah,
you know, that sort of like built-in like friendly rivalry. Like they've really owned that like in their relationship. It's cool.
Mm-hmm. And then we got Nadia and Natalie. The twins, they start with a prayer. They talk about third time's the charm because there are 2 times that they didn't win Amazing Race, I guess. I noticed at this point that they got different haircuts, presumably to help us viewers distinguish between the 2 of them, depending, to know which one we're seeing, which turned out to not be
much
necessary in the end. Well, but they're planning ahead. And they argue about starting the fire. And, I think my only disappointment in having Nadia get voted out first is just that I thought they're funny when they're arguing like that. And so just the idea that they're separated now means there won't be any more of that. Oh, well.
No, they were funny together. You can see why they've made it on to these shows a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're good TV. Like they're funny. Like their arguments are funny. They remind me of there are new people like that when I lived in England. And they really do they embody all of that like stereotype, and it's funny. It almost is like scripted. I feel like they were lifted like right out of like Bend It Like Beckham.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man, I haven't watched that movie in a while.
Yeah, ultimately I understand why she was the first one to go, and it made a lot of sense based on what their decision was. I would have liked to see them stick around a little bit longer too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is something we've certainly observed and talked about before, is that the person who gets voted off first, it's usually just like any excuse that you can come up with that would be any kind of a reason at all for anybody is leapt upon, because otherwise you don't know anybody well enough yet, so it's hard to make a decision. So if you have some sort of thing that everybody can say, oh, they were on the Amazing Race, and at least according to Dale, they betrayed people, so sure, yeah, that's a good enough reason, let's just do that, because then the decision is made and everyone else can relax. That's often how these first people voted out, it goes. You fixate on some reason that may or may not have anything to do with the actual game, but it allows everybody to reach consensus. Although in this case, it wasn't really consensus, though. It was still kind of a divided vote.
Yeah, and I thought it was a great play by Dale. Do I understand that they were fixating on the fact that he was the oldest?
Mm-hmm.
That was going to be the easy reason for everybody else until he offered up another alternative for them.
Yeah. Well, and I think what was interesting, too, is just the unknowing way that Nadia may have contributed to Josh not voting with her. Just the whole one of the girls thing. And she just kept saying it, and you would see him just cringe a little bit every time. Yeah. But anyway, last but not least with our couples, we got Keith and Wes, and they lose their Flint striker. And I don't know, they have a fun sort of chemistry between them too. Just the whole father and son thing, but just the whole, you're about as mentally strong as that rock bit.
Yeah, they trash talk each other pretty funny too.
Oh man, and they are natural storytellers too. The way they're relating their misadventures with the fire later, when they're telling everybody, everybody's laughing, and it's just like, oh yeah, we lost the striker, and then we got it working with the rock, but then we broke it. And yeah, so those guys are pretty entertaining too. And then Keith, we got emotion from him too, seeing him get all emotional at Jeremy getting emotional, and then being such a good sport about being the first person to go to Exile Island from his tribe. He seems like a good guy.
Yeah, I liked the way that he took that. Where first of all, I think Jeremy did a great job in selecting him and the way that he delivered the message, but Keith really connected on that and accepted that and didn't hold a grudge and didn't feel like he had any. It all went down really well, I think, on both of their parts. So I was happy about it.
Yeah. I like the little arena they had. It's very very much like the Redemption Island arenas. Seems tailored for the one-on-one challenges. So I guess we kind of talked about this, but will be interesting to see really if all the reward challenges are going to be like that, at least pre-merge. After that, who knows? So there's a little bit of talk about who made fire, who didn't, and of course Josh and Reed say, if you're going to be on Survivor, learn how to make a fire, which is, of course, it's always nice to hear people on the show say things that we say all the time. Yeah. It's also just seems like common sense. It's mind-boggling how anyone would not, get to the point where you're close to the end of being selected for Survivor and then not say, I wonder if maybe being able to make fire would come in handy. But then, of course, Keith and Wes tell their story. And then I was pretty impressed, actually, with Nadia and Natalie talking about, because Probst tried to set them up to make a snap judgment about, who are they not worried about, or who do they think is not going to be good, or who's going to be threat, or whatever. I don't even remember exactly what the question was, but it was something to that effect. And they basically just were non-committal, but saying what we learned on The Amazing Race is not to judge people based on your first impression. So I thought that was good. But of course, it's time to divide the tribes, and even though they all drew randomly, I'm sure I think it was random in terms of which individual of each pair was going to be on blue versus orange, but they certainly made sure that each couple was separated.
Right.
And so the blue tribe, aka Hunapu, is Missy, Jeremy, Reed, Keith, Natalie, Kelly, Julie, John, as in John M., and Drew. And then orange, the Coyopa tribe, is Josh, John Rocker, Val, Nadia, Dale, Baylor, Jacqueline, Wes, and Alec. So that's a lot of rattling off names that we're gonna. I feel like we got to know several of those people, over the course of this episode, but some of them we'll have to continue to hope we get to see more of as the season progresses. We got some early stuff here even before the challenge of Keith recognizing John Rocker, and I think what's funny about that is just we see that he recognizes him, and then of course the other person to recognize him is Wes, Keith's son. So
Yep.
I guess, but then again, I guess they're both Southern, and so if anyone is, they both seem like they'd also be into sports, and so who else is most likely to recognize him than Southern
Yeah,
sports fans?
I mean, they even both said they are Braves fans, and like I think even Wes says it, like is talking to him about it. He was talking about how like he was on the Braves like the last time they were really good, and
Yeah.
stuff.
That whole conversation was pretty funny between Wes and John Rocker. I think my favorite bit, of course, though, has to be the whole, your last name start with R. Does it have 5 letters? And then John Rocker's all of a sudden like, what? No. Oh, 6 letters. That's pretty great.
The whole thing was really, where he was just like, because you could see like John Rocker's like, he's like, God, I'm definitely not gonna get away with this. I'm gonna have to tell him at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hoping if I just keep walking, maybe he'll just leave me alone.
Yeah.
Nope, he's just coming along. God, all right, yeah, you got me.
Well, because I think maybe at first he was hoping it's like, well, if I don't confirm it, he won't be sure, and therefore maybe he won't tell anybody else. But eventually I think he realized it's like, no, he knows who I am. He's just toying with me here. But see, I guess this is what I was talking about earlier. We're jumping ahead a little bit, but in terms of John Rocker implying that, like, he might tell people who I am, so maybe I need to go after him first. And so that's where I was a little bit thinking that that would be an over-aggressive play in my mind. But he didn't then actually proceed to do that, so maybe he just thought better of it, and that was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thought.
Yeah, or they asked him, you never know what they pull out of them. Kind of like, so now that Wes knows who you are, does that make him a potential target?
Mm-hmm.
And if he said, yes, okay, now say that whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. They may have just set him up to say that.
Yeah.
But, just the interesting dilemma of that situation is that he can't really, how would he even explain to anybody else why they should go after Wes? You know what I mean? It's like, what possible argument could he come up with why Wes should be first, even if that was what he wanted? Yeah. But, I don't know. Anyway, so Keith had also recognized him, but they are separated on the different tribes. And then before this challenge, we get some nice, friendly teasing between Jeremy and Val already. Probst kind of sets up, it's like, are you worried that your wife is over there without you? And she's like, hey, I can take care of myself. I don't need help. But then, of course, Jeremy is the one that kind of insists to be the representative for his tribe, not knowing yet what that's going to mean. And it's interesting, too, and it's very illustrative, I think. You learn about personalities in that sort of a situation, because I think what we probably know about Survivor is that there's probably, in just terms of the odds of it, there's probably very little to be gained from ever volunteering for anything on this show. You know what I mean? It's like volunteering to single yourself out in any way is probably not going to lead to good things for you. But, or at least it's a risk, right?
Yeah, because it worked out all right for him, and his tribe seemed to really attach with him because of how it all went down. So
that's true. So it was a gamble that seemed to pay off in this case. I think largely on the strength of just him seeming to be really a good guy.
Yeah.
So
it was a persona that, not to say that he doesn't have normally a good guy persona, but that's the character that he is in this to them, and that part fits with it really well, of being the one to step up and volunteer. Yeah.
Well, and then he continued to be a very proactive player even after this initial bit where he's approaching everybody to, if not necessarily establish final alliances per se, but just at least to just sort of try to make sure he's spoken to everybody and establishes a relationship with everybody, which is, I think, exactly what you need to do at this point in the game, is you need to try to have at least a conversation with every other person on the tribe. But, we're still before the challenge here, and he gets to say, I don't care who I'm playing against. Oh, really? Because playing against his wife. For Flint and a bag of beans and not having to go to Exile Island.
Go.
So as Val comes up there, she declares herself here to play, and Jeremy is looking a little bit like he's feeling sick in the background of that shot. And it was just interesting too, just the emotional dynamic there, because he clearly loves her very much, and they're here to play and to compete, and so he did, but at the same time he's not really happy about the prospect of his victory having to mean that Val sacrifices her first days with her tribe.
Right.
They're both hustling pretty well in the challenge. It's basically pretty standard Survivor stuff, the untangling the rope and then the ring toss bit. So, but Jeremy pulls away relatively. Well, then again, I guess she did eventually catch up to him, but he had so much more practice throwing the rings by that point. You know what I mean? She was also throwing the rings before he got his first platform back, but he had thrown the ring many times at that point.
Right.
So I liked that there was a nice. They did you see them fist bump after it was over? That was a nice bit too. We talked about this a little already, but I really am. I really dig this one-on-one challenge idea, especially the loved ones against each other thing, which I'm sure that they will sustain as long as they can based on who's there, right?
Right.
But I think that it gives us the benefits of what we saw from Redemption Island with the whole dual aspect. We get kind of some of that feel, but without having to sacrifice the other bit of diluting the final tribal council drama.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I said when we opened.
Yeah, I know. I'm still. Okay. I'm still just thinking through it.
Just meant I don't have a response because
I'm
already.
Fair enough. You agree? Yeah. That's your response.
Yes.
Your response is to point out that we've already said that and we are repeating ourselves.
That I've already said it. You hadn't said it. You waited. I said it at the beginning. So.
Fair enough. So we have Jeremy pretty emotional right off the bat, which honestly I think was sincere. But I just noticed a comment in the asking if Christiana's webcam is down. I still see my video. Please let me know if you leave another comment if you think that it's not working. Although now that I think this comment was a while ago. Anyway.
I see.
Well, good. I hope it's working. So he is emotional. He's tearing up at the prospect of her having to go to Exile Island, and so I do think it was sincere. But it's also a question of, even if it wasn't sincere, it would be good strategy to act this way, because clearly that was a big part of what helped endear him to his tribe. As he's going around talking to everybody, once his tribe goes back to camp, everybody has in mind he seems like a really good guy. And a big part of that was, he worked hard to support our team in the challenge. He didn't throw it, but he was really emotional about doing it. He seems like a good guy. And that was you know, so it's interesting, I think, just to consider that, you know, he did what would be the strategic thing just naturally, because it's that interesting dynamic you get on this game of sincerity as strategy. Strategy. But in this case, I think, you know, I don't think there was any ulterior motive in it.
No, I mean, it wasn't just the emotion that he had about sending her. It was the way that he selected Keith and how he addressed Keith about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, the bit where they, you know, they shake hands and hug, and then Keith is like, "I got it," you know.
Yep.
You know, I'm gonna go protect your woman.
Like, you know, you got my back. You know,
yeah.
You're gonna go help here,
Mm-hmm.
and that just made him seem even more like a good guy. You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Although there was also the funny exchange of, why did you pick Keith? It's like, well, yeah, I know he knows how to start a fire. He's an outdoor guy. And then Probst goes, but they lost the flint. It's like, well, it wasn't his fault. It was his son's fault. And then Keith gets emotional too, and it was a nice moment. And this is a big part of where I have in my notes right here. Wow, this is a funny and emotionally intense episode already.
The thing I noted here, because Probst didn't explicitly say this, could Jeremy have chosen himself? Because he didn't say choose. I specifically watched it. He didn't say choose someone else from your tribe. He just said choose someone from your tribe. Maybe there is a rule that they just didn't show, but I'd be curious if that is a thing that they're just leaving out there and just never addressing, and if somebody takes them up on it, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's Luna's messing with stuff. Maybe they're leaving it as the sort of thing where they're not going to say anything about it because they want to see if anyone would ask to do it.
That's the feeling I got from this first time. So I'll be curious to see if that's something that occurs later.
That's a good question.
Because they didn't have the option to replace the person. Obviously, it would be kind of weird if you could beat them at the challenge and then get the reward and then replace them. That's part of the challenge.
In theory, in theory, it makes sense though. At least that he won the beans and the flint for his tribe. And so, that would still be the reason to try to win the challenge. But then take the opponent's place at Exile Island could still work. But, yeah, at the same time, I don't think that anything Probst said suggested that you could not, or that it would not be allowed to select yourself to go as your tribe's person to the...
Right. At least nothing in what we were given. It may have been something that they just didn't address and is there as a rule.
Yeah. See, I don't know. It's interesting, though, just because maybe he wouldn't have thought to ask, but it does definitely seem like if the opportunity had been presented explicitly that he could do that, he probably would have done that. Yeah. Or maybe not. Do you think he would have?
Yeah, I think he definitely would have. Him, I think. I don't know that everybody would have, but he seemed like the kind of guy that would do that. And it wouldn't have been a good gameplay move.
Right. It's that interesting dynamic, though, because it is where it's a little bit like what we were just saying in terms of sincerity as strategy, right? It's like it normally would not be a good gameplay move to isolate yourself from the rest of your tribe so early when everybody's forming impressions. But if part of the impression you form is someone who's willing to be self-sacrificing for those he cares about, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, they didn't definitively answer that question either way. So this is, of course, we get the two tribes going to their respective camps, and this is where we got John's Christmas morning exclamation, which I was amused by. we got Jeremy talk a little bit to the camera about both being emotional, but also my impression was a little bit embarrassed about getting emotional on TV. Did I misread that? That seemed like what he was talking about when he was saying, like, the guys I know back home, they'd be all over me or something.
Yeah, because he's a firefighter.
Yeah. But I mean, he was talking about tearing up on TV, right?
Yeah, he was talking about how, his other firefighters are going to give him a hard time about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's interesting, though, just as we talked about a little bit already, Jeremy continues to be a very proactive player, so he starts approaching the women first. So he goes to Kelly, and then goes to Natalie and Missy, and that's who we see him talking to early on anyway. And then everybody seems to like Jeremy because he's honest. I had a little note here just wondering, I mean, not in any kind of like a negative personal way, but he does seem sufficiently emotional that I wonder if that would make him somewhat unstable as an ally long term, but hard to know. Sorry, my dog is chewing on a plastic thing under the desk here. So, if anyone heard that noise.
Like I even said, I would have predicted that had he been explicitly given the choice to go to exile, he would have against better judgment because of emotion. That could come into play depending on how it affects, his wife in the future. He may be unstable. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would be willing to vote off his wife if it came down to it to further himself in the game. Mm-hmm. So if you need your alliance to be able to do that, if that's the kind of people, we'll see.
Yeah. I don't know. But so anyway, then we jump over to the other tribe, and we have Nadia, who, despite what she said with her sister at the challenge about not judging people by their, not judging the book by the cover, so to speak, she proceeds to judge everybody based on their age. Finishing with, and Dad is like 55. I mean, come on. As though that is some sort of an argument about anything. So I was entertained, but it was also just kind of like, yep, she's just sort of immediately establishing a hierarchy in her mind about, who's old and who's cool.
Yeah, and wasn't it like John Rocker where she was like, I mean, he's like athletic, but dude is like 40.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have Dale.
Like that somehow would make him cease to be athletic.
Yeah.
Even clearly is.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have Dale actually talking on his own about being so much older than everyone and also not really used to dealing with groups of strangers. But he always tries to look for the positive. And I thought that he did a number of great things here. One was to try to look for something that he can do to help distinguish himself and help his tribe, like the fire. But then there's also the bit where he's over by the water and he just sees some weird little, medallion-looking thing on the water cover and decides to take it just on the basis that maybe it looks like something interesting, even if it's not actually interesting. If someone sees him with it, maybe they'll wonder if it's an idol or something. I don't know, just on the basis of, who knows, why not just grab it? I kind of liked that. But then, like, being willing to break his glasses to get the fire started, and then succeeding at that, I thought was really interesting. I honestly, just on the face of it, because I had never, I guess, tried it like that, I wouldn't have necessarily expected that the two lenses together would have just automatically been better, but clearly it worked, so...
You did point out that it didn't instantly work. Like, he still took another 20 minutes after that.
Mm-hmm. But, again, it's like we were saying earlier with the hair. Hard to over argue with results. He got it done.
Yep.
And then the idea that he broke his glasses to do it made it even more like everyone, is like, oh wow, he started Fire Forest and he broke his glasses to do it because he's committed, and so everyone declares Dale a badass. I don't remember exactly who it was. Was it Julie maybe? No, Julie is not on that tribe. Julie's on the other tribe. So maybe it was either Baylor or Jacqueline, but who was basically saying he's trying to start fire with his glasses, which I've never heard of. And I was just thinking, what? What are some things you have heard of? Because I bet you could count them on one hand then. I mean, I just I don't know, that's too harsh, but I don't know, it seems like, doesn't everybody know that? That's kind of what I thought. It's like the whole magnifying glass thing. But
yeah.
The way she's talking about it is like she had no idea that was a thing. All right.
No, it was.
Yep. And it's never too late to learn things. The more you know. So let's see. That's about when we head over to get a look at Exile Island, which is indeed very rocky and desolate, except that you don't actually have to go be on that island part because there's a regular beach right next to it. So I thought that was weird.
That really was weird.
Yeah, it's like, why make such a big deal about that one little part that they're not even going to go stand on at any point? They just looked at it from the regular beach. I mean, not that you have to go over there, but it also just, making the point of how desolate it looks, and then going into the regular beach to find coconuts and stuff. But anyway, they're both bummed to be there because they both are aware that it's not a good thing to miss out on those first couple of crucial days of learning who your tribe is. Although it seems like it worked out okay with both of them ultimately, but certainly not a plus.
It still makes you nervous, even if it worked out.
Well, I think Val especially, just because Keith, there's this whole extra narrative about it, but Val is there because she lost the challenge and thus her tribe didn't get the reward. So there isn't that same heroic narrative of doing the thing for us, that she didn't have that same thing.
Right. And her tribal community.
Yeah.
Which that made it a lot easier for Keith too.
Yeah. So let's see, I keep losing my place in my notes. So then this is the bit where they each choose an urn, but only one of them had an actual clue in it. I think it's funny, though, that it's a sealed urn that they each declare, but both urns have the piece of paper in it, and it's just that Keith's was blank. It's like, if one is going to have the clue and one doesn't, why do you need to put a blank piece of paper in one? Why not just have the clue in one and the other be empty?
Okay.
Although, at the same time, maybe just the idea that the blank piece of paper, you don't have to necessarily show. I mean, they weren't prepared to be sneaky about it necessarily, but you could try to make it play like you did actually get something, and it wasn't ink. There's an opportunity to do something with that. You could say that it's anything, right? So I kind of like that, but it's just an illustration of the sorts of things that only would ever come into play in a game like this, because otherwise, why would you even bother putting a blank piece of paper in a sealed urn?
I hadn't thought about that.
So Val gets a clue for an idol that is hidden back at her tribe's camp. they talk a little bit about, and Keith is very happy to hear that Jeremy is a firefighter, and so that means, hey, not only do we have the bond over this thing of him choosing me to go here to Exile Island, but we're also both firefighters, so it probably felt good for him to just feel like, okay, I've got an in with somebody, even though I'm having to spend this initial time away from everybody else.
Yep.
So now we jump back to, let's see, this was the Hunapu Blue Tribe, and we have Drew giving his "I'm kind of a big deal" speech, where he's just talking about being a model and stuff, and he's just kind of he's saying several sentences in a row about basically trying to say how cool he is and how much he's helping with the shelter, and then we have people rolling their eyes at him. Julie in particular calls him, he's just kind of a young dumb guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, yep, yeah, I think I buy that assessment.
Yep, pretty straightforward, like from her. Pretty straightforward assessment from her. So.
Yep. So this is the bit where we got the whole, Wes recognizing John Rocker, and the playful way he's teasing out the name. But we kind of already talked about that. This is also the bit where Josh's eyes get irritated by something, and he's kind of suffering through it, but I liked his attitude about it of just saying, there's always going to be something. Survivor is kind of an unpredictable way to play, so I wouldn't have chosen to have irritated eyes, but you just got to suck it up and play the game.
Yep.
But it was interesting, though, that they were actually trying to figure out, it's like, well, something's doing this, right? So is it just dust or is it allergies? Oh, wait, maybe he got something on his hands and then rubbed his eyes. Hey, someone said, oh, hey, yeah, when I was handling these leaves, it seemed like it burned a little bit. And as they presumably figured out that there was some sort of irritant in the leaves they were using for the roof on their shelter.
Right,
I wonder,
it was like when they broke them, like there was like a sap or something inside of them.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of cool, just seeing that process of figuring it out. And, at least after that point, we didn't hear any more about Josh's eyes, and it seemed better later. So hopefully that was they figured it out. They got the right thing, and now they know not to mess with that stuff. All it cost them was having to rebuild their roof.
Exactly.
Yeah. Then we get more of John M., who is baiting the monkeys by howling back at them. I thought it was funny that it starts with us just hearing the noise and assuming that it is the monkeys, and then cutting to him making that noise. I thought that was funny.
That was good.
But then, of course, this is also the bit where he talks about how he's always been a goofball, but in some ways, some of the humor is a little bit of a, because he's also dealing with his father has an inoperable brain tumor, and so he had actually hesitated to come on the show because how much time might you be sacrificing with your father? If he might only have a few months left, do you want to be away from him at that point? But he says he got his father's blessing because his father's a Survivor fan. But we can understand how he would be worried about that.
Yep.
We have seen people on the show before decide to come on the show, but then once they're out there, decide that they made the wrong decision and actually leave. I don't remember exactly who it was, but there's a woman several seasons ago, I think, that had kind of a similar situation. They had a terminally ill loved one, and they decided after being on the show for a few episodes that they needed to go back.
Well, there was one lady who had lost her son in a car accident.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
and she wasn't able to like deal with like the grieving and closure of it out there, so she had to go back. That happened.
Yeah, it does seem like the psychologically intense and stressful Survivor environment can be cathartic for some people, but it's also not necessary. Like, if what you're processing really, you kind of need a strong support network around you. Survivor is not that. But anyway, so hopefully John will, not have too much problem with that. I mean, just in the sense that, hopefully that works out as well as possible. It does seem to me like I would be surprised if he decided to leave the show with Jacqueline, his girlfriend, still on it. You know what I mean? Like, even for that personal reason, but I don't know. Like, maybe if she got eliminated too or something. But we'll see. I just know that in this season on Survivor clip thing, we did get a clip of Probst saying, "So you are officially quitting the game." He's saying it to somebody. So, who is it and why? We'll just have to find out. At the very least, terminally ill father is high up on the list of fairly legitimate reasons that you might do that. You know what I mean? It's better than some other reasons that people have come up with in the past. So, immunity challenge time. Keith and Val are welcomed back into their tribes, and got a nice, impressive, big-scale challenge for the premiere episode here. We'll have to see. I know they've said, I think it was in the last couple of seasons. It was either last season or the one before that, where we had a bunch of smaller challenges, but they actually said that part of that was because they had planned bigger ones that all got like ruined by a rainstorm or something. But then, in any case, this one was big. So, is it just big because of the premiere, or is it they're all going to be big? But anyway, it was cool. It's sort of the multi-stage tower that they have to get up, and the puzzle at the top.
That was a hard puzzle.
Yeah, looked hard. And I think that's the typical thing that they do, because it adds to the drama. Because if you have one tribe that's just dominating the other tribe in the early part of the challenge, in order to make it more suspenseful, you want to have both tribes working on the puzzle before one of them is the winner, right? So you have to make the puzzle take long enough to let the other tribe catch up, even if they would still be so far behind on the puzzle. But then again, sometimes, you have the tribe get to the puzzle second and still win. Like this time.
Yep.
Yeah. So Coyopa, the orange tribe, had a small lead getting up the tower, but then Hunapu pulls ahead in the puzzle and wins it. So I don't know, do you have anything else about the challenge? I mean, I liked it, but I don't know that I have a lot else to say about it.
No, I mean, you can see, like, John Rocker was, like, clearly a huge asset for his team.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's a big guy. When you see him right there in the mix of it with everybody else, he's like, he looks huge.
Yeah. And the puzzle didn't look that hard at first until I realized like how it actually worked, and then I realized that's actually a really hard puzzle.
Yeah, it seemed like the pieces could really flip all the way around. There wasn't an obvious top and bottom of each piece even. Right,
and they were all like, all of the pieces, like all the things that you were building were identical, so it wasn't like there was you weren't able to identify like picture patterns of like where it fit together. Like you had to build it the exact right way so that you didn't end up with like this extra piece. It was.
I just realized that the reason people were commenting about suspecting that my cam was down was because I had accidentally selected to always have it show your camera. So everything up to this point has only been, the video has only been you. I just figured out what that issue was, and so it's fixed now. Anyway. Sorry about that, viewers.
Since you do like 85% of the talking, like that would be incredibly boring.
Well, they can still hear me.
Just watching me listen to you.
I'm seeing this, there's comments getting added on the YouTube page that I see them come up, but it seems like they don't actually pop up until well after the time that they are posted. So, unfortunately, I might have seen that sooner, because this is where I mentioned earlier, B. Fitz commented, is Christiana's webcam down? And that's where I was saying earlier that my camera's working, but then when Jonathan Reel posted, I've only seen Mike the entire video, is not switching between the two of you, I realized that was because I had accidentally selected to make it do that just without even realizing it, but hopefully fixed now. It also means that we did have some people at least watching for a little bit, so so that's good. If you guys have more comments, do go ahead and put them in there. They seem like they don't pop up right away for us to respond to in real time as much, but we will see them, and if we get the comment by the time we're still talking, we'll address it. You can also tweet at Christiana Ellis, and I'm monitoring that, and I will try to, if you have questions for us, let us know. Anyway, hopefully that's fixed now. Where were we? Challenge? The puzzle was hard?
Yeah. Puzzle was hard. Went with that.
So we go back to the Hunahpu challenge, or the tribe rather, for a little while. We have Keith kind of settling in. Jeremy promises to, have his back and help him get integrated back into the tribe, which is nice. But that's really all we see from that tribe from the rest of it, because, we want to focus more on the tribe that, has to go to the tribal council. So Val is worried, of course, that she'll be the first to go. So she's trying to find the idol with her clue right away, although, my guess is she didn't find it because they would have shown us her finding it, because that's what they always do. So even though the camera always plays for drama in the tribal council, if anyone has a hidden immunity idol, play it now, and then we close up on her just in case she maybe found it, except that there has never been a time where they did not show us the person finding it, and then they pulled it out at the tribal council. That has not happened once, unless I'm wrong and someone will correct me. But I don't think so. I can't imagine it ever happening, because it is such huge drama of the person finding it. You want to see, because it shows us, the viewer, that it did exist. It was in a place. We're curious about where it might be, and so also just the drama of the person finding it and being happy, and then the drama maybe of them having to try to hide it somewhere. Like that why would they sacrifice that stuff just for a surprise at the end that they still have either way, because of the person might play it or might not? So anyway, but so she looked for the idol, though, which was an interesting approach, just on the basis that if she's worried because she didn't get a chance to meet everybody, is it the right thing to potentially sacrifice more time of getting to know them in order to try to find the idol right away? I don't know. Maybe it's a balance.
I think they have plenty of time,
Yeah.
to do both.
Could be.
Because we see it all happen in 15 minutes. It takes at least a full day, if not two.
Mm-hmm.
So there's enough time to look for it and to still.
Well, but I think, isn't it usually the tribal council is the night after the? So it's like whenever immunity challenge is, tribal council is that night.
Usually. So it's usually that full day, but...
Yeah. But anyway, so it turned out okay, because nobody really ever even talked about targeting her.
No.
So instead, what we have is Dale rather smartly understanding that his age might be one reason that people might want to target him, and so he needs to come up with a reason to target someone other than himself. And honestly, if, I didn't watch the season where Nadia was on Amazing Race, but if he's right in his assessment that she was ruthless, then that seems like a fairly reasonable, justification for choosing to vote her out.
Yeah.
I mean, Amazing Race is a different game, and I don't think you can necessarily expect to translate the strategies directly from one to the other, but yeah, if everybody's just looking for a reason for it to be somebody, that's better than some of the ones it might have been.
Yep, I thought it was great.
Yeah. And especially framing the discussion when he's talking about it with everybody of saying he would rather do that than unfairly target Val. Which, on the one hand, it could seem unfair. On the other hand, she competed in a reward challenge for her tribe and lost. So, is it really unfair? I don't know that it would be unfair to target her. Now, that said, I don't know that it would be the best thing for everybody to do, but I mean, I don't think there's anything inherently unfair about it.
It's true.
Anyway, though, generally speaking, everybody is willing to agree to whatever as long as it's not them, and nobody has any really specific ties to anybody else yet, so at least not that we've seen much of. So Josh is kind of on board over there, but then of course Nadia approaches him to basically say he wants or she wants to bring him over for one of the girl alliance, because she's discussed with the other girls, we want to have a girl power all girl alliance, except that there's only 4 of us out of 9, so I guess we need a guy. Oh, I know. Now, yeah. What's interesting, too, though, is that some of this might just have almost... Semantics is not the right word, but it might have almost just been a bit of, like, he might have been more receptive if she had just not framed it in quite that way.
Yeah, like saying it's basically still an all-girls alliance.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, it's just like... I think that it's one of those things where it's sort of meant harmlessly, and he probably never told her that it annoyed him, and so she was maybe not reading him very well. But like that's
he definitely didn't. She wouldn't have just kept saying it if he said that bothers me.
Yeah, yeah. And at the same time that it's kind of a tacky thing to say generally, I think, but it's a thing, right? It's not like she made up that idea somehow. It's in the culture, this idea of this stereotypical gay guy calling each other girlfriend and that sort of thing like that. I mean, that exists in the culture, and that's clearly what she's responding to. But at the same time, I can understand also why he might be annoyed, and so he is keeping his cards close to his chest in the sense of saying, anyone who approaches me with anything, I'm going to say yes, because I'm not interested in closing doors at this point. But I'm also more inclined to go with the other side because they're not annoying me in that way. So let's see. I did just... Again, I kind of said this already, but just the simple idea of proposing an all-girl alliance when you're starting in the minority. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like you can't really work that rhetoric when you need a man's help to even get started.
Yeah, so it was flawed from the beginning,
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, it's one thing to say, hey, we want to be in alliance. It's another thing, just, the rhetoric of it doesn't work as well. Just by the facts on the ground in this particular case. But so that alliance wanted to target Dale for not being helpful in the challenges. But Baylor is already thinking that she is more into being in an alliance with Josh than necessarily being in that alliance with Josh. So, and I think she maybe sensed where Nadia didn't, that Josh was maybe not as into this idea as Nadia thought. So she goes over to him and basically just says, listen, I'm going to vote with you, whatever you think we ought to do. So what is that? And then here's where, this is a recurring theme for us on this show of just the how do people react when they're put in the swing vote position, right? Sure. And I think that, Josh was very correct to feel a little uncomfortable about it. But, kind of like when his eyes were irritated, it's kind of like that's how it's playing out, so don't complain, just do the best you can with what's going on.
Yep.
Now, that said, what ended up happening in the votes is that we got one random vote for Baylor in the middle of all that. I didn't actually look up. Did you look up to see who it was the vote for Baylor? Just because that was kind of curious where that would have come from. But, again, adding to the list of it being a slight shame to have Nadia go out so far, her analogy of using lemons.
Josh.
Josh voted for Baylor?
Yes, and that's what I did know that, because that's what I was saying at the beginning, like that he sort of had an interesting way in that he played this and that he threw his vote away.
Yeah. That's weird.
He got Baylor to vote with the group and then threw his vote away. Like, that was an odd way to... That's why I said it. He handled the swing vote in a very weird way, because he acknowledged that he was a swing vote and that was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But then it feels like he still left himself like, oh, I didn't vote with that group. Maybe. I don't know what he did, why he did that.
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting.
And also with a person that you were confiding in, like to vote against them, even though they had no shot at getting voted out, is just a weird thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yep, we just got a comment from Jonathan saying Josh voted for Baylor, as you just checked as well. So that yeah, boy, I'm kind of floored by that, just because I can't really, I don't know what the logic there is. Well, I don't know, maybe we'll get some explanation for it, or maybe it's unfortunately just cutting room floor stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But clearly he threw his vote away, because I don't think anyone else even talked about voting for Baylor. So.
Yeah, that's what he was doing. I mean, he was definitely throwing his vote away. But why he felt like he needed to do that instead of just voting, did he just not want to pick sides and didn't want to set someone else by voting against them, so he picked a person that he already was tight with who wouldn't be offended that he wrote her name down?
Mm-hmm.
But why throw away his vote like that? Like, why do you just want to leave it open to play both sides? That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe we'll get some comment on that at the beginning of the next episode. But so at the tribal council, did I get this all the way out that I was sorry to see Nadia go, partly just because of her analogy of wanting to use the lemons to make margaritas rather than lemonade?
That was funny.
And we also got some of Josh talking about the idea that trying to keep positivity up is very important early in the game, is that you need to try to keep that going even as you start heading into some of the more stressful aspects of the game. Nadia talks a little bit about some of the big differences between Survivor and The Amazing Race. In particular, just the fact that in The Amazing Race, she was with her sister throughout. Like, they wouldn't ever be separated except maybe just in the middle of specific challenges. So this is very different in that regard. And then also the difference, like she was saying, of like you're always doing something in The Amazing Race. You're going somewhere or you're doing some activity, and you're always following instructions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas there's a lot of Survivor, which is figure it out. But then there's actually discussion in the tribal council about how everyone is talking to Josh, which, you know, I think he did his best to stay upbeat about that. But again, I think we're aware that he's already uncomfortable, and rightly so, that being singled out in that way is not ideal. So and so maybe that played into why he chose to vote the way he did also, is that he didn't want to be responsible for defeating either alliance pair, but, you know, you also just run the risk then of seeming wishy-washy or non-committal. Because you are, like, by definition.
I mean, that's what he ended up looking like when he threw the vote away.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, he's enough of a Survivor fan that I feel like he's got to have some reasoning for why he did it, but I don't know what that is. So in any case, we got Nadia finishing up the tribal council by doubling down on the whole girlfriend stereotyping. But then as we vote, we got 3 votes for Dale, 1 for Baylor, and then 5 for Nadia. So she goes, and then CBS helpfully gives us the hashtag blindside. You know, I'm like, you know, hashtag eye roll. I mean, seriously, it's like, you know, that's something we've discussed frequently in the past too, just in the sense of, you know, just being surprised, I don't think should qualify as blindside.
No.
Yeah. Anyway, so she's obviously very upset and disappointed, and like she doesn't even say anything on her way out. Just kind of just immediately gets up to go without really even saying goodbye to anybody that we saw. And then she seems like a pretty good sport about it in the end, in her final words, which, I don't know, I mean, it kind of makes sense in the sense that, like, she's kind of been through this twice on Amazing Race already. So, you know, disappointed, but she's got kind of some experience dealing with this kind of disappointment.
Yeah. I think it just really frustrated her because they said that was the hardest thing, was the second time they were on Amazing Race, they were kicked off first.
Mm-hmm.
And now she was kicked off first from here.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is like, you know, we don't have any returning Survivor players this time, but anytime you've done something big like that, like Amazing Race or like John Rocker's Professional Athlete, it does put a target on you, and that's exactly what happened here. I mean, that was the rationale for voting for her, was we think we know what she'll play like because she did this thing, as opposed to her being able to establish her own identity within the game of Survivor, which, as we talked about, is a very different game from The Amazing Race.
Right, because I forget what his name was. I think it was Kat's boyfriend, who had won Big Brother.
Oh, right. I remember who you mean, but I'm forgetting the name as well.
He differentiated himself completely from that. You know, he had his own Survivor personality that was separate from being Kat's boyfriend and separate from being the guy who won the Big Brother.
Mm-hmm.
He did that well, you know.
Yeah. But and you know, maybe Nadia would have had an opportunity to do that at some point too, but she was, you know, just a victim of, you know, the whole thing, like we said, of being voted out first is it's often really not entirely based on who you actually are or what you actually do. It's been some superficial reason that everyone just kind of agrees is enough, because nobody knows each other well enough yet to have big reasons to vote someone out.
Yep.
So I liked Nadia. I liked her with her sister in particular. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but I don't think I would have rather had Dale go either, because he seems kind of interesting. Like I like him so far.
Yep.
So I think the only people that I feel like at this point I would have preferred is really just people that we haven't heard much from yet, and so that's not really fair either, right? And in some ways we may have not heard much from them explicitly because just nothing specific happened to them this time that was relevant to, I mean, but even still, obviously it was a 1.5 hour premiere, sort of supersized premiere episode. But, for having 18 contestants, I thought they did a pretty good job of giving us at least a little bit on, not quite everybody, but a number of people, so that we feel like there's several people we know well, and then a few more people that we got some glimpses of, but then we will either get to know them better as the season progresses, or maybe for some we will get to know them better just a little bit on the episode that they are voted out, where that episode will give us more footage of them so that we know who they are when they get voted out.
Exactly.
Yep. So I think that's all I've got as far as notes for this episode.
Yeah, because the preview was all just like, oh, it's going to be such a dramatic season.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Like nothing. There was nothing other than, like you said, there's
all out of context stuff, and it wasn't even next time on Survivor. It was stuff from throughout the season. So who even knows what, if any, of that was from the next episode?
Yep. So.
We're still early enough in the season that really it's anything goes, and I don't think you can really make any kind of predictions at this point.
Correct.
Yep. Well, all that said, I think this is definitely one of the stronger premiere episodes. I was going to say stronger in a while, except I feel like the last couple of seasons have been starting really strong.
Yeah, they've done better since they've gone to the longer start, the longer opening episode.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since they went to like the 2 hours, hour and a half, it's been a lot better. So.
Yeah, it's such a challenge introducing us to so many people, while there's also so much action that they have to set up for us.
Yeah.
But they're doing pretty good. They're good at it. Maybe that's why the show's still on the air for 29 seasons.
Yeah, because they're able to make adjustments.
Yeah. All right, so that I think that'll probably do it for this episode. Remember, if you're watching this or listening to the audio version, you can find more information on us and our podcast notes over at ChristianaEllis.com. You can leave comments there or on the YouTube video, and maybe we'll talk about them on the next episode. And so tell us what you thought about the episode and what you thought about our episode. And once again, apologies for having the first half of it not switch between us in terms of the camera.
You get that right next time.
Yeah. Well, it's a learning process. I know what to do this time. So, or next time. All right. I think that's it. Good night, everybody.
Yeah.